In 1987, 36 years ago, 250,000 Jews joined on the Mall in Washington, D.C. to give a message to Mikhail Gorbachev that it was time, way past time, to allow Soviet Jews to emigrate from the Soviet Union. It was at the time said to be the largest Jewish rally held in D.C. On Tuesday of this week, November 14th, 290,000 Jews and others, primarily Jews from across the Jewish spectrum of movement, background, and practice, joined together to stand on the Mall, to stand for Israel, to stand against anti-Semitism, to stand with the demand that the hostages taken by Hamas be released. I was blessed to stand on the Mall both times. Of course, the protests and emotions were different. A common link was one of the speakers, Natan, formerly Anatoly Sharansky. On Tuesday, this week, the Mall was packed. I'm sure you saw pictures or news reports, and some of you were there. Hats, Israeli flags, signs, posters demanding the release of the hostages, posters with photos of the hostages, handwritten slogans proclaiming Jewish values and Jewish solidarity, Am Yisrael Chai included. The speakers included Jewish leaders, Israel's President Isaac Herzog, members of Congress, members of families of the hostages, college students who have been on the front lines of anti-Semitism, and a most powerful Pakistani-American Muslim woman, who's a women's rights activist. The first speaker was, in fact, Natan Sharansky, a former Soviet refusenik. He has long been now an Israeli leader and statesman, and he spoke on that day of the fight of Soviet Jewry. And he spoke of the fact that even when he was told again and again that he was alone, when he was imprisoned for 9 years, and that all that they were fighting for had failed, he said, and I quote, that all those faces of Jews from America, from Britain, from Canada, all who were coming to Moscow to support us, that was enough for him to simply remember, reminding him he was not alone. He said during his imprisonment, the picture in his head was one of one Jewish family, one Jewish fighting family was always there and kept him going. The gathering on Tuesday was powerful and meaningful. The unity and solidarity were clear. For even if we have different ways to interpret Judaism, different paths to observe our Judaism, at this time of fear, hatred, uncertainty, and so often powerlessness in our Jewish world and larger surrounding world, we stood together, united. Some 30 members of our North Shore Congregation Israel community were in that crowd in D.C. on the Mall Tuesday. We have invited a few to share their reflections. We'll first hear from Dave and Jake Bloomberg.
My name is Jake Bloomberg. I'm a senior at New Trier High School and a longtime member of NSCI. Much of my Jewish identity was formed at Camp Moden in Belgrade, Maine. Moden is America's oldest independently owned and operated Jewish summer camp with a strong historical connection to Israel. And I went to Moden for 8 weeks for 8 years straight and made the closest friends of my life there. After our last summer at Moden in 2022, we all decided to take a special trip together to Israel this last summer, where I had never been before. In planning for the trip, I had envisioned a teen tour with lots of time at the beach, but I quickly realized that my experience was not the typical American teen tour. My tour, which was organized by the AIM-PRA Leadership Academy, was an intensive pre-IDF training program. The program was designed to test our physical and mental limits, and my experience in Israel taught me not only to love to learn to love the land, but to understand the history of its founding. During my trip, I hiked from Eilat to Jerusalem with only a compass, a map, and minimal food. We sprinted up Mount Herzl carrying our friends on stretchers to simulate IDF mission activities, and I also had the chance to meet Israeli teenagers my age that were excited and committed to serve in Israel's military. We spent time on 2 kibbutzim. The first, Kerem Shalom, is the closest to the Gaza border. It is only 109 yards from the Gaza Strip and was the first site attacked on October 7th. I also spent 2 nights at Kibbutz Nir Oz. Today, 180 of the 400 people who live there are now dead. Much like I was not prepared for the intensity of my trip to Israel 4 months ago, I was again taken aback by the October attack on Israel by Hamas. Almost 6 weeks after the attack, my thoughts keep moving between the images of the brutal attacks and death shown to the world mixed with my own memories of the warm, kind people I met on the kibbutzim that were either killed or kidnapped. When the March for Israel was announced, my camp friends and I immediately knew how important it was that we stood up not only to bring back the hostages, many of whom we encountered in Israel, but also to fight against anti-Semitism at schools that many of us will attend next year. The bond we formed with each other and to Israel made our presence there more important than anything else. The event was inspiring. I saw Jews from every corner of the U.S. and Canada, and my dad and I got there early to take in the scene and talk to different people. There were lots of hugs and love within the hundreds of thousands of people there, and we ran into many different people from different parts of our lives, including Rabbi Geffen and Rabbi Green. The most special moment was sharing the experience with my camp friends. The pride I felt being there so soon after the life-changing summer we had in Israel has transformed us. We will be friends for life, and an essential part of that friendship is our bond with Judaism and our support for Israel.
Shabbat Shalom. Yes, I'm tall. Thank you. Thank you. One of the many things I love about the NSCI community is the continual theme of L'Dor V'Dor. Everyone that knows us can attest that my wife Kim tears up, like visibly, anytime the song is performed at any service. Friends and friends' children look around the sanctuary to find Kim during the L'Dor V'Dor arrangement to make sure the waterworks are coming in. It's like Old Faithful. In the last 6 weeks since the October 7th tragedy, the sentiment of L'Dor V'Dor has run through my mind constantly. Indeed, all generations are having their own reckoning with the event. It's been a process of thought, seeing how this tragedy informs our view of Judaism, our view of ourselves as Americans, and the nature that our obligations of Jews to generations that came before us, and also to the generations coming up after us. The idea that my 17-year-old son felt a strong pull to be among the voices of Washington, D.C. supporting Israel in this moment really helped focus many things in my life. The kind of father I want to be, the kind of Jew I've raised my kids to be, and, what was important to me for this generation and the example I wanted to set. We went. It was a beautiful sunny day in D.C. Any thoughts or fears of safety went away when we saw the sheer numbers of all kinds of Jewish Americans from all over the country. We spoke with lots of assembled. The manifestation of the best game of Jewish geography of all time. It was the Super Bowl and the World Cup combined. We were all there. But it really reminded me of some of the words that Rabbi Geffen spoke at the High Holidays during the Rosh Hashanah service. That's really been on my mind ever since. She spoke of how the bond between Jews in 2023, a lot of it, we come together because we want to fight anti-Semitism, obviously, is very important. But in that process, we can't forget that the essential bond between Jewish people is our Judaism. The best way to come together is through our own Jewish values and our connections that way. And I didn't get a sense at all when we were there that the connection was based on let's fight the hate. The connection was that we're all Jewish and we're all here together and we're all sharing in it. That vibe was omnipresent during Tuesday. The vibe was one of pure love and solidarity of Jews of all kinds. Jews that wouldn't agree on a lot of things. There was none of that. There were hugs and smiles and an overall feeling that our disparate community came together strongly and with full unity to meet the moment. The pride that we were there is still with me tonight. Some assorted thoughts from the rally. It didn't feel like a political rally. Politics never came up once. And in 2023, that's pretty amazing when you think about it. Nobody talked about anything. It was about Jewish values coming together to support and speak the truth. Fun fact, Rabbi Geffen and I went to college together. One of the classes that all Jewish people took at our college was called The History of the Israeli-Arab Conflict. Cleaning out my basement a couple months ago, I pulled out the binder. This is from 1994. Binder this thick. History of the Arab-Israeli Conflict. There's treaties. There were UN declarations. There were maps. It was a lot. We did the work. Professor Ken Stein, who taught that class, made us do the work. It was probably one of the hardest classes I've taken all the way through law school, everything. It was intense. We had to memorize facts like we just take 1776 for granted. We had to learn it. And it was a formative experience. And I think about those lessons and the work that we put in then compared to where we are today. When I see a stat that 45% of young people get all their news from TikTok, which is the epitome of without context information. And we talk about anti-Semitism, and we talk about hate, and we talk about it, but we want to talk about Jewish values. The Jewish values we have to impress upon everybody in the world right now is that of curiosity and doing the work and learning. That's what we really have to be doing out there. You know, I don't think a lot of these pro-Palestinian marchers are inherently anti-Semitic. I don't think a lot of them are. I think they're uninformed, and I don't think they've done the work. And if there's anything I could do to change the world, it would be to help people put in the work, to provide the context. And I think us as Jews and the values that we've been raised with, that's really, really important, and something that I'm going to really, it's something I'm thinking about. I don't have a solution, but it's something that we have to keep thinking about. The final thing I want to say is that I was a history major in college. I think in terms of history all the time. And as I was there on Tuesday, I thought about the historical moment we were in. And I thought about the fact that we're living in 2023. How many times in our history as a people could you imagine a situation you get 290,000 Jewish people coming out into a public sphere as Jews, being Jewish? And as I sat there, I thought about, Lador Vidor, the previous generations. I thought about my grandfather, who passed away in February, who was a World War II veteran who fought in Iwo Jima. His Jewish values, raised his family as the only Jewish family in Lamont, Illinois. I thought about Kim's family, my wife's father, who was born in a displaced persons camp, to Auschwitz survivors, and what their life was like, and the generational trauma that they involuntarily passed on just based on their experience. All of that was there. And I thought about even my dad's parents. My dad was a Rogers Park, Northside Sen Jewish guy. And, if he were to be honest, he would say back then, in the 40s and the 30s during the Holocaust, people cared, but there was a sense of fear. People were scared back then of really showing their Jewishness and being out there. There was a sense that it wouldn't be accepted. But here we are in 2023. The moment is now for us. We can go out there in the public sphere and be Jewish and fully voice our values in full voice. And if there's anything I want to say, Lador Vidor, that's the lesson for this generation. We've got to meet this moment. We met the moment Tuesday. We're going to continue to meet the moment. These are scary, messed up times. But I think more than anything else, it's going to be our Jewish values and the unity and the thoughts of different generations that are carry us through. Thank you.
Lena Ostrov.
Shalom. It's been over 20 years since I came to United States as a Jewish refugee from the former Soviet Union. Working in multiple synagogues in Chicago and New York, I heard stories of how members of different Jewish communities went to the March for Freedom of the Soviet Jews organized by synagogues, Hebrew schools, and student Hillel organizations. People shared with me how amazing it was to be united together at the National Mall and how proud they were for us to come as a result of that victory. When I first heard that there will be a march in Washington November 14, I told my husband, I want to go. In 1987, U.S. Jewish community did it for us, now it's our turn. And he immediately replied, yes, we must go. That evening I mentioned the march and that we are thinking of going to my mom, and she replied, I want to go. The next morning, my daughter texted me that someone from Chicago Hillel called her and offered her tickets to Washington, and she would try to get excuse from 2 exams scheduled that day because she really wanted to go as well. The next couple days, we looked at the different travel options and cleared our schedules, and by Friday, booked a DC trip. All of us, 3 generations, Vedor Vedor. Myself, my husband, and my mom got plane ticket back to Chicago, but decided to drive to DC overnight in a rental car, while my daughter flew with Hillel group. What a day it was. We chose to park at the last stop at the Metro Green Line as it has a big lot. As soon as we got out, we realized that people around us were going to march too. A groom from the car parked next to us saw our Illinois license plate and thanked us for coming from so far away. The metro station was filled with people with different places. We rode metro with a group from Philly. People carried posters and Israeli flags. We saw many different groups, including families, friends, and people walking proudly by themselves. There was a big presence of police and transit workers, all welcoming and really ready to help. When we got to the National Mall, it looked like some surreal Jewish Disneyland. It was crowded, but organized, clean, and very, very safe. It felt like almost 300,000 people were hugging each other at the same time. It was amazing feeling of belonging. Everyone was so kind and respectful to each other. It was very powerful to hear speeches from youth group leaders, college students, artists, politicians, all showing clear support to Israel and Jews. One of the first speakers was Natan Sharansky, who was here at North Shore congregation not so far ago, and we were here. 36 years ago, American Jews marched in DC to fight for his freedom. On Tuesday, Sharansky used his freedom to fight for people in Israel. We flew back from Baltimore Washington Airport. That evening, 90% of passengers were Jewish. People were working at the airport with huge Israeli flags. At 7 p.m., passengers from different flights got together at one gate to pray, sing, and dance. And after, everybody flew to their different direction. LA, New York, Chicago. When we landed, my mom said, too bad we had such a horrible circumstances to get together today. I wish we can celebrate our unity every year on a happier occasion. And I want to add, yes, I grew up with this feeling of anti-Semitism. And it wasn't from the government. It was from our neighbors. It was from my friend. I remember I heard in a school bathroom how my good friend told, Lina's such a good girl, even she's Jewish. And my mom and all our parents used to tell us, it's fine. And all my childhood, I thought, no, it's not. And I know I'll survive, and I did survive, but I didn't want my kids ever experience it. And now, when my daughter telling me about the posters in her college, I went to her Chabad on Saturday, and what should I tell her? And I'm telling her, I want you to be safe. I want you to be safe, and then we'll figure it out. Basically the same way my mom used to tell me. And I don't know, it's too close. It's too close to home again, but I hope it's never gonna happen. Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Lena. There are no words and too many words. We're really grateful. In the January, February bulletin, our congregation will get to hear and read other reflections of members of our congregation. We are blessed to hear the three of you this evening speak at length. Thank you. So where do we go from here? Let us continue to see the unified community and faces that Sharansky talked about. Faces unified in values, aiming for peace. We must, wherever we are, whoever we are, continue to lift our voices, speak and act for Israel, for the hostages' release, and against anti-Semitism. And as we do, let us hear Sharansky's words. He says, the outcome of our struggle can only be our victory. Let that be a victory of peace, of life, and of safety. May we make it so. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will and ours. Please join me.